Colin Kaepernick, Cam Newton, Eric Reid. Now, Eric Dickerson says Shedeur Sanders is next on that list. Drawing a direct line through decades of controversy and consequence, Dickerson's accusation goes beyond one player's sidelining. It's an indictment of an NFL pattern that punishes boldness, identity, and lineage. His claim? That the Cleveland Browns and Kevin Stefanski used a fabricated injury report to keep Sanders off the field, not for performance reasons, but to avoid the political optics of empowering Deion Sanders' son.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
For Dickerson, it's history repeating itself, dressed up in medical jargon and backroom decisions. If true, it's a chilling example of how institutional power in the NFL continues to suppress emerging black talent when it threatens the status quo. Dickerson sees Sanders not just as a rookie quarterback, but as a symbol of generational change, one the league isn't ready to embrace. While the Browns struggle and shuffle quarterbacks, the one with the poise, the pedigree, and the potential is benched under dubious pretenses. Dickerson's warning is clear. This isn't just about one game or one coach. It's about a system that still hasn't been forced to reckon with itself. This story is no longer just about football. It's about exposure, of a system that still decides who gets a shot and who gets shut out based on everything except merit. Eric Dickerson knew exactly what he was doing when he accused the Cleveland Browns of lying. Not of a miscommunication, not of a misstep, but of deliberately fabricating an injury to keep Shedeur Sanders off the field. And the more you look at the situation, the harder it is to argue against him. Shedeur was ready. He was in uniform. He went through pre-game warm-ups like every other active player on the roster. Not limited. Not held back. No visible issues. And yet, right before kickoff, he's ruled out with a back injury that hadn't been mentioned once in the days leading up to the game. No practice reports flagged it. No medical evaluation was publicized. Nothing. Just a vague injury report and a sudden disappearance from the rotation. And that would have been strange enough on its own. But then the Browns turned around and promoted Bailey Zapp, a practice squad player who had barely been in the system, as the backup quarterback. Over Shedeur. In a game where the offense had been dragging for weeks and ranking dead last in the league. This wasn't about game strategy. It was a cover-up. Dickerson didn't just speculate, he said he had inside sources. People close to the team. People inside the NFL. And they were all telling him the same thing. The injury was fake. Shedeur wasn't hurt. The decision was never about his physical condition. It was a calculated move, driven by politics, resentment, and fear. And it's not the first time something like this has happened. When you look back through the league's recent history, you see a clear pattern. Talented, outspoken black quarterbacks being shut out under the thinnest excuses. Colin Kaepernick, Cam Newton, Eric Reid. Players who didn't just perform, but had something to say. Players who weren't afraid to stand out or stand up. And now, Shedeur Sanders is the latest name in that list. But his situation is even more complex. Because he's not just a talented rookie. He's Deion Sanders' son. And that carries weight. Deion is a disruptor. He's challenged the status quo from day one. First as a player, now as a coach. He talks big, wins big, and refuses to shrink himself to make traditional football gatekeepers more comfortable. And that makes him a target. So when Shedeur entered the league, there was already a narrative waiting for him. Not one that he created. Not one that he deserved. But one that was assigned to him. The son of a man the league still doesn't know how to deal with. The rookie quarterback whose success would validate everything Deion stands for, and everything the league tries to suppress. The Browns didn't just bench Shedeur. They made a choice. To marginalize. To control. To protect their own internal power structure at the expense of a player who had done everything right. And then they tried to hide it behind a lie. But it didn't hold. Fans noticed. Analysts noticed. Dickerson noticed. And when Shedeur himself confirmed that the decision to bench him wasn't his, the truth started to unravel. Because now the question wasn't, why didn't he play? It became, why was he prevented from playing? And the answer, according to Dickerson, lies in something bigger than X's and O's. It's about power. Who gets it? Who keeps it? And who gets shut down for threatening it? Let's look at what Shedeur has done. He hasn't lashed out. He hasn't played into the controversy. He's responded with composure. With maturity. He trusted his process. Trusted in timing. And stayed focused on growth. No drama. No outbursts. Just quiet strength in the face of a very public betrayal. And that is what makes this story so heavy. Because even when he did everything right, it wasn't enough. He was still sidelined. The Browns are trying to protect themselves, protect Kevin Stefanski's job, protect their organizational image, protect the narrative that they're developing talent fairly. But when your most promising quarterback doesn't get a snap in a game you're losing, while players with less experience and lower ceilings get the nod, it's not hard to see what's really going on. This isn't about building for the future. It's about blocking it. And Dickerson made that plain. He said this was part of a broader campaign, one that doesn't just affect Shedeur but every player like him. Every player connected to someone who speaks out. Every black quarterback who dares to step in with confidence and presence. The system isn't built to support that. It's built to flatten it, to humble it, to sideline it under the guise of development or discipline or scheme fit. But what we're seeing with Shedeur is something uglier: erasure. The Browns had a chance to be honest, to say they weren't ready, to say Shedeur needed more time. But they didn't. They lied. They invented a medical reason to keep him off the field. They staged it. And they hoped no one would look closer. But Dickerson did. And now everyone else is too. What does it say about the NFL that one of its most promising young quarterbacks has to fight just to be seen? That even with the support of a legendary father and now a legendary Hall of Famer speaking out on his behalf, the league still tries to control the narrative? It says this isn't about football. It's about fear. Fear of disruption. Fear of change. Fear of what happens when someone like Shedeur comes in and performs so well that he can't be ignored. Because if he succeeds, everything the league has tried to suppress for decades gets pulled into the light. And that's what this all comes down to. Dickerson didn't expose a personal grudge. He exposed a system. A coordinated effort to minimize players who don't fall in line. And Shedeur is the latest casualty. But he won't stay one. There's a reason people like Dickerson are speaking up. Because they see what the league doesn't want to admit, that Shedeur's talent, character, and leadership are impossible to bury forever. That even if Cleveland won't give him the opportunity he's earned, someone else will. And when that happens, the Browns will have to answer for the way they mishandled this moment. For the politics they prioritized over progress. For the false injury report they used to hide the truth. Because Shedeur's story isn't over. It's just paused. And the longer they delay his rise, the more powerful his return will be. Let us know what you think. Was this injury real or a cover-up? Did Stefanski make a football call, or a political one? Is this about Shedeur Sanders, or is it about everything the league still refuses to confront? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like this video if you see through the spin. Share it if you believe talent deserves a real shot. And subscribe for more, because we're going to keep talking about the stories the NFL hopes will stay buried. They can bench the player, but they can't bench the truth. You can feel it in the way this whole story has shifted. What started as a quiet game day scratch has exploded into a national controversy, with one of the NFL's most respected legends flat out accusing the Browns and Kevin Stefanski of deception, of discrimination, and of deliberately stalling the career of a promising rookie. And not just any rookie, Shedeur Sanders, a quarterback whose last name has become as much a challenge to the league's culture as it is a nod to his undeniable pedigree. Let's be clear, this wasn't just about a questionable roster decision. Coaches make those all the time. What separates this from your average head-scratching play call is the intent behind it. This was a manufactured injury story. A fake excuse. A deliberate attempt to pull Shedeur from the game while pretending it was for his own good. That's not just bad coaching. That's manipulation. And when Eric Dickerson came forward, he didn't speak hypothetically. He cited insider NFL sources. That's not conjecture. That's information from people who know exactly what's going on in those meetings, in those locker rooms, behind those closed doors. People who have seen this exact playbook used before. Because this isn't new. It's just louder now. We've seen the league go out of its way to silence players who disrupt the hierarchy. Colin Kaepernick didn't disappear because he couldn't throw. He disappeared because he stood up. Eric Reid was labeled a locker room problem for doing the same thing. Cam Newton, a former MVP, was treated like a washed-up backup long before his stats warranted that downgrade. And now Shedeur Sanders is facing that same machine. The only difference? He hasn't even been given the chance to be too outspoken. He's already being punished, preemptively. Just for who he is, who he's connected to, and what he might become. That's what makes this so damning. Because what are they really afraid of? That Shedeur might struggle like any rookie does? Or that he might show up, ball out, and force the league to admit they had it wrong? The Browns' offense is one of the worst in the league right now. Last in key categories. Anemic, predictable, uninspired. If there was ever a time to take a chance on a young quarterback with proven leadership, now would be it. But instead, Stefanski and the Browns went in the opposite direction. They benched Shedeur in favor of a practice squad quarterback, all while feeding fans a weak injury narrative that unraveled the moment Shedeur appeared on the field looking completely healthy. Let's be real. If Shedeur Sanders was a fifth-rounder from a no-name school with no famous dad and no social media following, he probably would have started by now. But because he is Deion Sanders' son, because he's a media presence, because he has a brand, he's threatening. Not to the players. Not to the fans. But to the system. Because Shedeur represents something the league still hasn't figured out how to handle. A young black quarterback who plays well, speaks confidently, and comes from a family that doesn't need the NFL to define them. And that kind of independence makes the old guard nervous. The NFL has always preferred its stars to be grateful, humble, and above all, silent. Especially when they're black. The league will celebrate charisma, but only on its terms. When a player like Shedeur comes in already commanding attention, already commanding respect, and doesn't need to bow to that system to be visible, that's a problem for them. So what do? They delay. They stall. They create roadblocks. And when talent alone isn't enough to justify holding a player back, they manufacture an excuse. Like a back injury that only exists on a piece of paper. Eric Dickerson saw through that instantly. And he didn't hesitate to call it out for what it was: sabotage. He knows what it looks like when a team lies to the public. When coaches push a narrative that protects their position but sacrifices a player's opportunity. And in this case, Dickerson made it clear, this wasn't just a mistake. This was an intentional move to bury Shedeur's momentum and keep the spotlight off the one guy who might expose how broken this organization really is. And here's the thing, Shedeur handled it with complete class. He didn't lash out. He didn't throw anyone under the bus. He stayed calm, stayed focused, and stayed ready. He even confirmed he wasn't the one who pulled himself out. He was ready to go. So let's talk about that for a second. How many rookies would have kept their composure in that situation? You've done everything right. You're healthy. The team is losing. The offense is a mess. And you still don't get your shot. Not because you aren't ready, but because someone up top has already decided you aren't part of their plan. That kind of composure takes maturity. It takes discipline. It takes leadership. And that's exactly what Dickerson was pointing to when he praised Shedeur's character. That's why people believe he'll come out of this stronger, more prepared, and more dangerous than ever. Because the longer the league tries to suppress Shedeur Sanders, the more powerful his breakout moment will be. And that's the part the Browns, and frankly the entire NFL, should be worried about. Because this isn't just about this game. Or this season. It's about a league that still treats its most dynamic players like liabilities when they won't fit into a neat, obedient box. A league that hasn't evolved as much as it wants people to believe. And if you're still on the fence about whether this was an accident or a scheme, ask yourself this. Why would a healthy, talented quarterback be benched during a losing season, unless there was something else going on? It wasn't performance. It wasn't development. It was politics. And that's the rot at the core of all this. Because the NFL loves talent as long as that talent stays quiet. The second a player becomes too powerful, too visible, too connected, they become a threat. And the response is almost always the same. Deny them reps, control the narrative, and if necessary, lie. That's the playbook. And in Shedeur's case, it's playing out exactly how it's been designed to. But not this time. This time there's too much heat. Too many eyes. And too many voices refusing to let it slide. Eric Dickerson is just the beginning. This conversation is only going to get louder. And eventually, the league won't be able to hide behind fake injury reports and vague statements. Eventually they'll have to deal with the truth. That Shedeur Sanders is the future, and no amount of silence or scheming will stop that. This isn't going away quietly, not when a legend like Eric Dickerson steps into the ring and accuses an NFL franchise of staging an injury just to keep a rookie quarterback on the sidelines. Not when the rookie in question is Shedeur Sanders, a player whose last name alone seems to provoke more fear in the league than most top draft picks combined. The Browns didn't just sideline a player. They lit a match under a much bigger conversation, one that's now boiling over. And the people paying attention? They're not buying the excuses anymore. Let's go back to that Patriots game. The Browns had nothing to lose. Their offense was floundering. The fans were frustrated. The media was circling like vultures. So why, in that moment, with your season slipping and your offense ranked dead last, would you not give your promising young QB a chance? Especially when he's fully dressed, warming up, and reportedly ready to go? Because it was never about his ability. It was about control. What happens if Shedeur comes in and performs well? What happens if the narrative shifts from rookie backup to future franchise quarterback overnight? That kind of performance doesn't just impact one game, it reorders your entire QB room. It exposes that maybe, just maybe, your leadership has been misjudging talent all along. And Kevin Stefanski? He's not trying to be exposed. He's trying to survive. You can feel the pressure on him right now. A losing season. An offense that can't move the ball. A fan base that's getting louder by the week. The last thing he needs is a PR storm where people start asking why the best quarterback on the roster hasn't played a single snap. So instead of facing that question, the Browns feed the public a mystery injury and hope no one notices the cracks. But they did notice. And Eric Dickerson turned those cracks into a full-blown breach. When Dickerson says his sources confirmed the injury was fabricated, that isn't gossip. That's a warning shot. It's a signal that insiders are done protecting this narrative. That people inside the NFL are watching this go down and saying, yeah, this isn't about football. It's politics. And here's the deeper cut. This is not just a Shedeur Sanders issue. This is about the long history of how black quarterbacks, especially ones with swagger, confidence, or a voice, are handled in this league. Let's not forget, Shedeur didn't fall to the 5th round because he lacked the skills. Scouts raved about his poise, his decision-making, his arm strength. But the league whispered other things, about his personality, his brand, his father. They acted like having a media presence was a red flag. Like confidence was arrogance. Like talent that came from a loud family needed to be humbled. They weren't scouting him. They were judging him. And now, even after he made the roster, even after proving he could be a reliable option, they're still gatekeeping his opportunity. Dressing it up as injury management. Painting it as player protection. But Shedeur himself said he didn't pull out. That decision wasn't his. So who made it? And more importantly, why? Because if he's healthy and the team is losing and your offense is flailing, then what exactly are you developing here? A quarterback or a cover story? Stefanski's decision to elevate Bailey Zappe over Shedeur speaks volumes. Zappe wasn't groomed in the system. He wasn't a major draft investment. He was a body off the bench. But he was safe. Non-threatening. A guy who wouldn't disrupt the power structure, who wouldn't challenge the coaching decisions, who wouldn't bring national headlines with every snap. Meanwhile, Shedeur represents the opposite. He brings eyes. He brings questions. He brings expectations. And clearly that's too much for the Browns' leadership to handle. So instead of rising to the occasion, they ran from it. The NFL wants players to be grateful for crumbs. To accept whatever scraps of opportunity they're given and pretend it's enough. But Shedeur wasn't built like that. His entire football journey, from Jackson State to Colorado to now, has been about defying expectations, breaking molds, proving people wrong. And that's terrifying for a league that's still clinging to its old ways. Dickerson made it plain. This is systemic. This is about how the NFL continues to marginalize players who won't conform. And the moment they sense a player might shake the foundation, they start building walls to keep him contained. What they didn't count on is that people would see through it this fast. Fans have been watching this mess unfold and asking all the right questions. Why wasn't Shedeur playing? Why wasn't the injury announced earlier? Why did he look completely fine during warm-ups? And why is the team pretending that none of this adds up? Because it doesn't. And it was never supposed to. It was supposed to be quietly swept under the rug. A one-week storyline. A no-show that wouldn't get traction. But then Dickerson blew the lid off, and suddenly the league is scrambling. Now the Browns have to answer for decisions they thought would go unnoticed. Now Stefanski has to explain why a fake injury report was more comfortable to him than a real quarterback evaluation. And now the NFL has to sit with the fact that one of their brightest young prospects is being stalled out not because of a lack of ability, but because of fear. Because the minute Shedeur steps on that field, the charade ends. The excuses crumble. And the league will have to confront the truth. He belongs. He's ready. He's composed. And more importantly, he's earned it. And when he finally gets that shot, you can bet people will be watching. Not because they want to see if he fails, but because they know what he represents. A shift. A threat to the politics that have kept too many deserving players in the shadows. This isn't just about proving people wrong anymore. It's about proving a system wrong. And when it happens, when Shedeur finally gets to show what he can do on that field, it won't just be a win for him, it'll be a win for every player who's been buried under bureaucracy, passed over because of perception, or blocked by coaches too scared to shake up the status quo. This is bigger than football now. When Shedeur Sanders steps onto the field not as a backup, not as a project but as the quarterback he always was, it's going to be a reckoning. Because no fake injury report can hide what people have already seen with their own eyes. A quarterback who was ready, who was healthy, who was warming up in front of cameras and fans, and who still got pulled because someone upstairs was afraid of what success would expose. The Browns weren't protecting Shedeur. They were protecting themselves. From questions, from comparisons, from accountability. If he goes in and performs well, Stefanski's decisions suddenly look suspect. The organization's commitment to developing young talent looks like a facade. And their narrative collapses. You don't have to squint to see what's really going on here. It's right in front of us. A healthy, talented quarterback being passed over during one of the most pitiful offensive seasons in recent memory. And not because he failed a physical or missed practice or caused drama, but because of politics, because of optics, because of fear. And here's the thing, fear doesn't win games. But talent does. Leadership does. And Shedeur Sanders? He's got both. He didn't lash out. He didn't cause a scene. He handled it with patience, with focus, with an eye on the bigger picture. That's what Dickerson was pointing to. That's what makes this situation so damning. Not only is the NFL silencing a player, they're silencing the right one. The one who should have been your model rookie. Mature. Composed. Ready. Instead, they're sidelining him while trotting out quarterbacks who can't move the chains, pretending it's all just part of the plan. But the truth is leaking out. The insiders are talking. And Dickerson isn't the only one calling it what it is anymore. You can't keep burying the future without the past speaking up. And that's exactly what's happening now. So when the time comes, and it will come, when Shedeur takes the field and shuts this all down the only way he knows how, with precision, poise, and production, those who kept him down won't be able to rewrite the story anymore. The truth's already out. Keep your eyes on this. Because the longer they delay him, the louder the fallout will be when he proves they were wrong. Not just about him, but about how they treat players who refuse to shrink themselves for comfort. If you're with us on this, drop a comment. Let's talk about it. Share this with someone who's tired of politics smothering talent. And if you want more unfiltered breakdowns like this, hit that subscribe. Because this story isn't over. In fact, it's just heating up.